Hello and welcome to the Tumble Tankard. I'm Jim, aka Arjun, and we are here for DM&D, where we chat about all things Dungeons and Dragons and beyond. We are continuing our Class Act series this week, focusing on Druids. Here with Nans, and to talk about uh, the Defenders of Nature. Um, But there's a lot of other roles druids can take. But first off, uh, as always, at the start off like here, Ans, have you played a druid?
I have actually
Yes.
played a Circle the Moon Druid. She was
Sure.
she was very fun, very formidable. For the party that we were in, she effectively became the tank of the group. But at the same time, she was also kind of doing like the healing type stuff. So I would pre-buff, get into my bear form or whatever form I chose, and make sure
Mhm.
before I cast the last spell, which was usually conjure the animals because that's fun. Damn love when we have multiple things we got to move around on the board, and then I would
Always.
just go tear apart all the monsters. It was so much fun.
Nice. Nice. I had my second D&D character in high school was a druid.
Yeah,
Way back in good old um, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, there where druids were sort of like just clerics, but with a different spell list that had more nature-based things on it. So um, they weren't really all that different. They didn't have really shapeshifting abilities at that time. They were just sort of like just other spellcasters that had a different spell list. Um, that was a fun time there. It was my elf druid from my elf family that I had going for a long time there. Um, but then more recently, I did play my little goblin druid named Zavix, who was also Circle the Moon druid, Zavix the bear, who literally would just this little goblin would turn into a bear. Like just it's just kind of the fun idea of that. Bear, very occasionally he would change into other things. Um, my favorite thing to do with him, my favorite thing I did with him, I should say, was I changed into a little a spider, climbed up into a tree over a bunch of sleeping bandits in their camp, and then I jumped out of the tree, turned into a bear on the way down, and slammed on them. As so the drop bear situation of like landing on a guy as a 600-pound bear.
love that. So much fun.
Um,
Him and
and
Sora would have
so
gotten along really well.
Zomics was a blast. He was so much fun to play. It just like it's just he was a little sneaky dude who just like would just suddenly become an animal and tear things apart. Um, but it kind of gets us into why the episode today is called Change. Um, Changing shape is not the only thing druids can do. We'll talk a little bit about that here, but it is the most common thing that people gravitate toward in the druid class. It's a circle of the moon. You know, change into animals, being able to take these large animal forms and everything else. The one thing about Circle of the Moon is that it's difficult to play at higher levels because the animal forms don't have a way to really scale up. And at some point you kind of run out of things that are going to be that you can do. They're still very useful. They still do some really cool things, but the animal forms themselves, I mean, when you're talking about somebody throwing around ninth level spells, even a T-Rex is going to be like, okay, yeah, it gets squashed in a turn or two.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Druids are
it's just,
nasty.
it is, yeah. So the fact is, you're going to be, burning through those forms there. Now, the idea of Circle of the Moon Circle of the Moon Druid being able to turn into elementals and powerful elementals at that, that can do a lot of fun things as well. Um, but there are lots of other forms the druid can take. Obviously, circle the land where they specialize in a certain element or a certain terrain or a certain area, and sort of defenders of that region essentially. Um, Druids have a lot of spells that affect the weather and use lightning and storms. Um, they also have the spore druids deal more with decay and natural the after effects of death and having things decay back into the soil and back into the dirt. All part of nature's. Druids, as you mentioned, have a lot of animals they can either work with, control, um, or summon and be a pain with. Um, One thing about druids in back in the old days, druids had the strictest alignment requirement. You had to be true neutral as a druid. And then the idea there being that you don't ally with good or evil. You don't go for law and chaos. It's a balance of all things, which is what nature is. Nature has the cruel, they have the cutesy, they have the chaotic, and they have the order that's established by nature itself. And so the druid kind of held all these things in balance. in order to make in order to make nature flourish, and to defend things. Um, so druids have this almost a role in some ways of being uh, tied to a region or land, which made them a little bit hard to role play and adventure with originally. Had to figure out why a druid would leave their grove or why a druid would go out and do something else. And so you do like some terrible things of like, oh yeah, their grove burned down and they're out there trying to do something else to bring balance to the world. There's something, I don't know. It's just there's all sorts of interesting ways that druids had to be involved in the story sometimes. Um, so it's not so much that way anymore, though. I mean, you've had druids in your parties, and you've
Hmm.
played druids, obviously.
Hmm.
What was sort of the hook for druids in your games?
So if I had a druid, I often ask the players, like, how did your person leave their tribe or their group or whoever it is that they were with? A lot of times it was just like I didn't create a backstory yet, and I won't get it until much later on. And by that point, they've already been adventuring. It doesn't matter anymore. But for my specific character, she left because there were two different factions starting to film or like build in her tribe group. And one was stick to the old ways, the other one is no, the new ways better, makes us live longer. And I chose to stick with the old ways because everything as nature is, everything should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, as nature always has it. And then you get to be reborn and come back through. You may not be yourself, but you know, somebody else may have your spirit. At least that's how it was portrayed with this DM. Um, and my mentor, my teacher said, it's time for you to leave to go experience the world before you end your life. I'll hold down the grove here as the elder, but when it's time, you will get the call to come home to be the elder. And I was like, okay, cool. So I took off, and basically I was orphaned, which is how I got to be as her student apprentice. And I took off and went out into the world to start adventuring, got hooked up with the crazy group of adventurers that I was with, and and did some really crazy things that druids should not be doing in any
Sure, sure.
capacity.
And that does make some role playing challenges for druids. I mean, how do you justify the trucking around inside of a city and dealing with
Right.
people who are like very not nature oriented,
Mhm.
and here you are like the wildling in the middle of a
Yep.
mega city. It's like this doesn't make any sense. Um,
To
but
combat some
yeah,
of that at the beginning of the campaign, when we were going into
mhm,
cities, I'd stay in wild shape form.
gotcha.
We hadn't had combat beforehand. I have two of them. I'll just go into wild shape form, and we had a ranger, so I was basically his beast for and nobody thought twice about it. So I never
Sure,
got to
sure.
I didn't have to interact with, the citizens until I got comfortable in understanding where my role as a druid inside this big, huge city applied.
There's that. Yeah, exactly. Um, uh, with Zomix, I mean, I was part of a barbarian tribe, essentially, and things were invading our lands, and so we were being sent out to go find out what they were
Hmm.
and deal with them. So we never really had to go into the big cities.
Hmm.
Um, we did eventually infiltrate a city-like place. It was mostly filled with orcs and other monstrous things that were all allied with this dragon thing. Um, that we had to go deal with, and some cultists and everything else. That so by that point, yeah, we were well established as being a big pain in the butt for this group that was trying to invade our lands. Um, that character's backstory was literally I grew up as a I actually born and raised as a goblin and just like horribly vicious, nasty little monsters, and just never quite liked what they were doing. And when I got my chance to get away, I did. Um, and so wandered the woods for a long time until I came across these barbarian lands who just took me right in because they had hobgoblins and half orcs and humans and whatever. They were just all barbarians.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was a fun time. it it can be a challenge to insert a druid into a campaign if it doesn't quite fit, depending on what the campaign is. Um, Now, obviously, we had a druid in our party for a while there, being a Circle of Stars druid,
Right.
which is a very different style of druid who's not really focused on nature, but the skies themselves, the stars, and sort of the cosmos. And that, I mean, if you're under a night sky, you fit in wherever you are. You might not have exactly the social aspect of what's going on, but the idea that you're not really tied to a specific type of environment or anything else at that point. Um, so the idea that nice thing now is that Druids having so many different like styles can really open up a lot of different options for role play and for this, how you fit into a campaign. Obviously, a Circle of Spores Druid. Well, anytime there's, I mean, they feel right at home in a graveyard. Um, they
Yep.
could be buddy buddy with a death cleric, no problem, or even a grave cleric, no problem at all. Or a swarm keeper ranger, or there's all kinds of fun things like that sort of makes sense for that. Um, in terms of using druids as enemies, well, druids can be very territorial. So it's pretty simple to say druids are defending this area. If you're in this place, they're going to mess with you. The Witch of the Wilds, being a druid with a bunch of like animal followers, maybe even lycanthropes that work with her or for her or something like that. Um, or has a coven of witches that are all druids. That can work as well. They don't have to be hags. They don't have to be um, warlocks or anything else. That I mean, druids work just fine for what they can do. Um, the kindly druid overseeing a grove of trees, obviously works out very well as well. So, or some other druid villains or druid NPCs that either used or might
Me,
use someday.
I have not had a villain druid NPC. I attempted one, um, but the party promptly banished him. So, like, I attempted it, and they were like banish, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, well that works. But there is a hag that plays pretty well to an evil character that I like. It's the sea hag, and they love protecting their land, their waterways. And I kind of threw a couple of them, and like the water, when I described it, the land that they were standing in was almost like swampland, but they had like 2 inches of water that they were trudging through the entire time they were going through it to justify how the sea hag got up there. But yeah, they just promptly banished her. So I was like, well, there's that one.
Yep. So Green Dragon, good to see you there. Druid villains running an open air wilderness dungeon. So the idea of like, yeah, having like twisted paths through a forest,
Hmm.
and various monsters that guard various parts of the forest there. An open air dungeon was really great, especially in those lower level situations where the party doesn't have fly yet. Um, Obviously, an open air dungeon, open air wilderness kind of like gets pretty messed up once the party can fly over top of it and look where they're going here.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but but or having some way, the idea of if a canopy of trees is mobile enough, they can prevent people from flying up through them, like trying to just seal it off and cut them off. There would be fun ways to do that. Um, the idea of a druid having a lot more power as an NPC, in their domain, essentially,
Mhm.
goes a long ways.
No hit
Obviously,
points. The
uh,
spells hit just a little bit harder.
yep,
The
yep,
AC may be a little bit harder. Yep.
yeah. Well, and the idea that they're not constrained by having to build a character sheet. You can just literally just like, hey, this is the master of this domain until you do something to bring them back down to your power level by destroying these sites of power within the twisted forest to then bring them back down to being a killable foe.
Blow out the candles because that's what I
Yes.
blow out the candles.
Yep.
And they
Exactly.
had to be in a specific order, but if you could read Druidic, which most parties have somebody who can, I don't know
I
how.
mean, comprehend language is a thing. So
Hmm. Hmm. And just you can read the candles and figure out how to blow out the right candles in the right order.
yeah. So, um, yeah. So I think anytime you have that sort of like, um, I mean, druids sometimes might be the big enemy trying to destroy a city. These people have encroached on their territory, and now they're going to be, I mean, they want to destroy the civilization that's grown up and is now messing with their forests or messing with their environment or whatever it is. So druids can be a really vicious defender of their lands, or an attacker for interloping force of any kind, because obviously uh, it's um it's a thing where druids have a very specific motivation, especially NPC druids. They are taking care of a region, they're taking care of a place. And anything that threatens that place is going to be dealt with in kind.
I once had a
Um,
druid test the players because this is before I understood how the alignment worked in a game. So I tested them with a druid and a baby unicorn. The druid told them that the baby unicorn was going to grow up because it could see the future and would essentially be the world's end. What are you going to do now? And I tested their alignment. Like, a unicorn is completely pure good. Like, it can't be anything else. And they went in individually, so each player did not get to talk to each other about what they saw or what they did. And alignments were changed. Some alignments were
Interesting.
changed. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. It was in.
Um, Dragon there was a fan of elemental themed druids who are immortal servants of powerful elemental lords, or even elemental plane creatures like salamanders, like WoW's Ragnaros raid boss. Absolutely. Any nature themed enemies obviously can have ties to type things here, or elemental themed enemies, obviously, because druids have ties to not just nature but the elements as well. Um, through elementals and all the different fire and water and earth spells and everything else they have. So um, it makes sense that the Elatins are allied with those powerful elemental lords,
Mhm,
which makes some interesting ideas of maybe even taking a druid warlock who's actually made a pact with that elemental lord along with the along with the druid levels and everything else, um, where that give and take power of power is gone beyond just what they can draw from nature, but what they draw from that being as well, entity. Some definitely some fun aspects there to play with. Um, One very recent incarnation of the druid that was very debated on, and was the druid that was in the D&D movie.
mhm,
And they did some things in there that which were a obviously turning into an owlbear, which is a monstrous creature. And there's a whole debate about that, but hey, it's fun looking at the stats for an owl bear and looking at the stats for a dire or for a polar bear. They're almost identical. It's just a reskinned same thing.
mhm.
They call this a monstrosity, call this a beast. Their stats are almost identical. So there's no real reason why. And heck, in your world, baby owl bears are a natural thing. Maybe not originally, but they are now. So um, the idea that, oh, just because they're a mix of two creatures, it makes them a monstrosity. No, they still they still breed and have eggs and they hatch from eggs and everything else. They aren't some strange amalgamation of otherworldly powers. But yeah, it's but so that was a big debate there. But one other debate there, and this is something I actually brought into one of my games. Um, the way exactly, I was just getting that Green Dragon. Uh, I love the way that movie Druid was constantly shape changing. I love that idea. That the idea that minor shape changing into small creatures, non-combat creatures,
Mhm.
shouldn't be limited. The Druid can just pop from one to the other because they're literally there's no need for that except for like flavor, for fun encounters, and doing things like, yeah, the idea of being a rat to being a little bird to being a deer to bound over things to then back to things else. They're not in combat. They're not trying to change into something that's going to attack things. They're literally just doing it as part of an encounter or part of a way to there. And that aspect they're really saying to me in that when you wanted to take a minor animal form, then you can do as much as you want. But when as soon as you go into a combat form, that's where you're limited to how many uses you can do.
Based off of your class. Yep.
So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So ideas like, yeah, and so I mean, I guess you circle the moon and they can turn into bigger things, but even normals druids can turn into larger, like
Right.
eventually turning into a more powerful creature. Um, so I mean,
Yep.
it's one of those things that I like. If that's something that the person wants to do, they want to have that freedom to do things. Or like one of my in my kids' games, my teens game I ran, the druid wanted to run around in the form of a fox,
Hmm.
like all the time for a while there. Eventually, they kind of took on their own form and started doing things more in their own form there. But initially, they just wanted to run around as a fox. I'm like, fine.
Get
I'm
comfortable
like,
in
I'm
your
not
own
going to
skin,
limit
right?
you. Yeah, I'm not going to force you. Oh, you need to change back into your dragonborn form. You want to be a fox? Be a fox. Um,
Yeah. I
so
I prefer when I was in my wild shape form. This is before the movie came out.
mhm,
We had a combat where they were like, there's a hole in the wall," and I went, "Well, that's my cue to turn into a fly or a bug or
a,
something to
a
be
mouse.
a mouse, something to be in that room that I wouldn't be noticed because it happens all the time, and then just go in there and listen." Well, a lot of the players at the table went, "That's kind of boring because you're the only one hearing the information and have to bring it back to me." Well, that's kind of the point, because what if
Yeah,
I don't write down the correct information? What if I write down the wrong things and then we do the wrong thing, right?
yeah.
Like that's kind of part of the play is doing that,
Well, and how often does a rogue scout ahead?
right?
Like sneak ahead there and listen to things there? How often does the wizard go invisible and like or send out an arcane eye to go spy on something there? It's built into the game, so there's no reason why in a situation where you have the ability to do that, why you shouldn't do it. It just makes sense.
I think it's
So,
a fun way of being able to use your druid abilities, especially if like since the movies come out, just use them for non-combat creatures all the time, right?
yeah,
I think that
yeah,
would be a fun.
yeah, I agree. That's so yeah, that's something I kind of like the idea of, or having some like maybe some limitations, but not much. I mean, the idea that turning into animals is kind of a thing that druids do, at least in this incarnation of D&D. So yeah. Well, I'm gonna jump into what we do before. There is some pop culture druids, some druids out there in other forms of media. Um, Obviously, we mentioned in the D&D movie there was a druid in there, so seeing it on this big screen was really fun to watch. Of the shape changing abilities and some of the spells that she used and changing into the larger creatures was a lot of fun. But there's some other interesting characters out there from various places that I think would work well as a druid. Um, the first one that jumped out at me, that first one on my list here, Storm from the X-Men.
Oh, I love Storm. She would be a great druid.
Now, I would say she is probably a druid sorcerer, like storm sorcery, maybe a druid tempest cleric, to kind of expand on those abilities of using lightning and thunder and stuff. But she absolutely controlled weather and was tapped into the natural world.
Hmm.
And so I could definitely see Storm as a druid of some kind. Um, and then that led me off to another crazy extreme of Captain Planet.
I love Captain Planet.
I mean, the theme of Captain Planet very much fits in with Druid there. Obviously, his abilities do not. Your cat is going crazy there.
She
Get on the camera, Bailey.
she's adorable. I love her to death, but good lord.
She's a pain in the butt. Get on the floor. Um, so, I mean, Captain Planet's abilities and everything else, but the messaging and everything else there is very much that Druid sort of like the natural world and preserve nature and everything else.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Frankly, I don't see him as actually having abilities and powers and spells, but Steve Irwin is
Oh, he is
absolutely
a
a
druid.
non-magical druid. I mean, but he's so tapped into the natural world and animals and everything else that. A lot of your nature conservatives, not conservationists, so we fit in the Druid motif,
Jane.
whether they have magic or not. Jane Goodall,
Hmm.
yeah, anyone that does work with animals or does work in nature, people that work in the Forest Service, um, they're out there in nature, they're out there, um, like being part of that. They sort of have a Druid type of a vibe to the powers and abilities. But people that do have powers and abilities, um, poison ivy,
Yeah, the evil
absolutely.
side. Yep. Hmm.
All the plants are there. And the flip side of that, I had to look up her names. I couldn't remember her name in there, but Dana Pan, uh, um, Layla from Sky High, the plant girl from Sky High.
Oh, right.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, she was all very much about. She basically was a good version of poison ivy.
Man, I haven't watched Sky
Um,
Blast from the Past, Jim.
I know. I love that movie, but yeah, it's so good there. But yeah, she's one obviously. Any plant-based Swamp Thing from also another one from DC Comics. Definitely um another druid type thing there. But here's a fun one. Unless you have any it popped up at you that you thought of
I
before I do
mean,
my last two.
no, I mean, we talked beforehand about how
Yeah.
anybody like the guy from I just said his name a couple of minutes ago and I can't remember his name. Um, from Avatar: Last Airbender,
Yes.
the uncle.
A lot of different characters, but Uncle Iroh.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I mean he was a firebender, but I mean he definitely had a more druidic like outlook on the world, in terms of his idea of balance and of harmony of things. Obviously, the Avatar himself is all about balance of the different elements of nature and everything
Hmm.
else.
Yep.
So, um, so yeah, I mean Avatar is a whole lot of just um, I mean, not just druids, but has a lot of druidic type things in it. Um, I'm going to throw out the one that was painfully obvious when it hit me because if anyone circle the moon, this guy here, that's Maui from Moana.
Maui. Oh, Maui.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely someone who obviously that shape changing into different animals and everything else. Um, and there are other I mean, Beast Boy from Teen Titans can
Hmm.
change into any animal he wants to. I wouldn't call him a druid in his outlook, but in terms of his abilities, he definitely has the abilities that you expect like put with the druid there.
Right.
And to keep going with the comic theme here, I was like, who else would be a druid who you might not think of as a druid? Aquaman.
See, I was thinking
The
Aquaman,
man
but
is
I
an
was like, he's in the fish.
but that's the whole thing. You could have an aquatic domain druid, and he would be one. I mean, he's got the powers. He communicates with the animals. He summons fish and dolphins and whatever else that. Um, he's more powerful when he's in his watery domain. Um,
This is true.
so I mean, he has all of the abilities we expect to have a druid have. He doesn't change his shape, but he has everything else that goes along with being in tune with his element, or his environment. Um, and so, yeah, it really comes down to like druids have some unique spells. They have some unique abilities, but a druid is a lot of times just an outlook. What is their motivation? What do they want to do? And where clerics have domains, we talked all about domains with clerics here. Druids have more of a they're kind of all nature domain, but different aspects of nature. Because nature is not simple. You've got predators and prey relationships. You've got plants. You've got the growth and decay of nature. You have the encroaching civilization on nature and pushing it back, and the idea of being one with trees and with animals and everything else, and the inherent kind of connection to the Feywild and the fairy type thing like that. Because again, that's I mean, while druids don't have anything that's specifically totally Fey based, there's definitely a lot of things there. So being an archfey warlock druid makes a huge amount of sense in terms of abilities and motivations. Throwing in that nature cleric, um, nature domain cleric in a druid has a lot. Um, uh, we've seen some fun things of like, I mean, imagining a druid rogue who sneaks along in rat form, gets into a place where he can't be seen, and then pops up into normal form there and sneak attacks someone, and then changes back into a rat as a bonus action. A Circle of the Moon druid rogue is could be really crazy because I mean, like I don't need to hide. I can just change back into a spider and just scuttle away on the ground as a bonus action.
Yeah, good luck
So
stepping on them because spiders are gross.
yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to it's all about the unexpected, and druid rogue would actually go really well together in that aspect. Um, Obviously, druid fighters, druid barbarians. Um, I mean, having that like more martial defender of the wild, um, those work really well together. Um, I mean, druid sorcerer in terms of storm sorcery and druid spells go really well together. The only ones that don't really quite work is like a druid wizard, just because they're so opposed in how they do things. But I mean, you could make it work. A druid monk makes a lot of sense, being one with nature. I kind of see a lot of the airbenders, a lot of the benders from Avatar being druid monks, because that that becoming one with your body, with with nature around you, and the ability you have makes a lot of sense that way.
Got to center
So
yourself. Yep. Yep. That makes sense.
exactly, yeah. Um, there any other had you run into any other druid like multi-class things you've seen here that worked really well, or druid like druids that were kind of unexpected in how they played?
So I had a player pitch the idea of a druid artificer. And
Interesting.
I was like, okay, so explain how that would work. And the way that he was playing it is almost like he was playing Batman.
Okay.
I was like, okay, so, but like, you're not Batman. He's like, no, but like, near when I get my flying levels, I kind of want to be able to turn into a bat. I was like, well, okay, so you want to be Batman. That I'm pretty sure
Literally.
we
Yeah.
could go any other way of building out a Batman person without actually having to play as a druid.
Yeah. Dragon there put druid monk could go fully kung fu panda with animal form martial artists.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, the funny thing is, actually, I would love to see. I'm not gonna do this anytime soon. I've always had the idea of doing a Humblewood campaign with animals that can do various things. So any kind of like any kind of animal form monk would be very fun there. But animal form druids just obviously worked there. Um, but yeah,
You
I
know,
love
I'm
that.
building that out,
Yeah,
Jim. I told you that.
I know, I know.
Hmm.
Yep, yep.
That's
Um,
going to be a while off, though. I've
so
got too many games running as it is.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Um, I mean, when we get into Monk, Kung Fu Panda will have its own absolute. Will be brought back up then at some point there, um, but it's awesome to see. Um, but yeah, so some some odd takes on monks on druids, obviously. Um, Having that devotee of decay was what I put there, is that druid who's just like grave domain cleric druid, spore druid, who basically is all about helping things to go back to nature, helping things decay and go back to what they are, or helping prevent the thing from decaying if needed. Be a very interesting type of druid, kind of creepy, um, but it could be for a fun character to play and or um, um, run alongside. Um,
Well, I got a question for you there, Jim.
yeah, what's
Running
up?
on that. Um,
Yeah,
can druids wear metal?
yes.
Yeah.
Metal is a natural thing. I mean, obviously, metal is forged; it's not natural in its there. Um, I would say it'd be interesting take to have a druid who wouldn't wear metal. A druid more focused around like trees and animals might not wear metal in that. It might go more for hides and bark and things like that, and use spells to enhance them. But there's no reason a druid, like especially look at a Circle of Stars druid. out the window in terms of like what you expect from a normal druid.
Right.
Um, I mean, the idea of a more militant druid might use the armor of the things of the people he's killed in defending his forest, and might actually take that as something and incorporate it in some way to make it a part of their protection, um, or might use that to armor its allies or anything else like that. And so a druid running around on a breastplate that's got like vines and leaves and bits of other things like tied into it and everything else that, but still metal armor. I can't see a druid running around in full plate.
No.
I mean, a fighter druid in full plate would not make any sense to me.
No.
But incorporating some elements of metal into their armor, I can totally see that for some druids.
What about when they
The whole thing,
shapeshift?
yeah,
Do they get to keep it with them?
yeah. Well, that's if the item has been enchanted in some way and attuned to be able to do that. Obviously, everything else a druid has is incorporated into their animal form, unless it specifically says otherwise. So I would say no, unless it was something was done specifically to allow for that. Um, but again, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. It just wouldn't be something that would happen naturally. Naturally. Um, yeah. When my little goblin turned into a bear, he didn't suddenly still run around with his like spear in his hand and his pouch of stuff and everything else. Um,
That
uh,
incorporated into him, it became part of the bear, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I was wearing leather armor. I didn't suddenly have leather armor on the bear. It was just when I changed back, I had leather armor again. Um, but eventually having a special leather armor that does manifest on the animal form in some way, again, is enchanted to do so, I can totally see that. Um, Now, here's one thing. I so I did allow when uh, my druid in my team game cast Flame Blade and then changed into animal form. I let them keep concentration on Flame Blade to give them flaming claws,
That's actually pretty cool because you
because
can't
that
keep
way,
concentration on what is it, fire armor?
or bark skin
Yeah,
or stone
so
skin. Yeah,
yeah, I could see where that
yeah.
would work. I mean, it didn't break the character any more than a druid
No,
already does, but like,
and actually, it gave them a little bit. It let them continue being able to use that animal form a little later and still have on par with the rest of the party. If they were in magic weapons or
Mhm.
uh, a flame tongue longsword and everything else that. Well, the bear doesn't do a huge amount of damage
Right?
comparatively to other weapons, so having a flaming weapon wasn't a problem. I
Yep.
mean, and again, they were still having to maintain concentration on it, so
And it's
they
one of
couldn't like
those
have.
things where, like, uh, druids, that's the other thing I was going to bring up. But druids, for me, I have a hard time finding like magic items to give them that would keep them in their transformation form as long as the player wants them to. Because in fifth edition, it was your druid level divided by three, I believe it was, for the amount of time that you could be in your druid form or something weird
Something like
like
that,
that.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so weird with math. And my brain went, but why? Is it not a concentration type thing like everything else? And then,
Well,
okay,
I'm glad it wasn't.
right. So, and then at the same time, like, where's the fairness in, okay, so he gets a flame tongue sword. I don't get one because I can't use it if I'm in my beast form at
Sure.
all. And it's not like any of those properties transfer over to the creatures that I summoned because they don't get any
Mhm.
extra abilities. They are what they are.
Yeah.
So like I didn't see for me when I was being the druid for the first time where the fairness was in all of it.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was just conversation with the DM going, "Hey, what can we do to make me
Mhm.
more rounded?"
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to with druids and anything that shapeshifts. I mean, obviously, if I polymorph or something like that, obviously that's a thing you are changing my form into something else.
Hmm.
I'm not really me anymore. I'm in this thing now. Um, so there's a difference there. The idea of a shape change spell where I'm like changing myself. Um, you should have some control over what still works and what doesn't, especially things that you're attuned to. If you're attuned to it, why wouldn't it still work in some way? Because the
Hmm.
whole point of attunement in fifth edition is to basically it's bonded to you now in a way that allows you to use the item. well, then you should be able to use the item when you're not when you're not in your normal form,
Mhm. Mhm.
in some aspects. So again, it kind of comes down to something you talk to your DM about there. If DMs think about that with your druid there. Now, I will say there's a really weird time with druids where they start to lag a little bit and they spike in power when they hit that next CR tier, with especially Circle of the Moon druids. So it'd be like, okay, I can be a wolf, I can be a wolf, now I can be a bear. Oh boy. Because it's CR2. And then I can be a bear, and like everyone else is getting stronger and tougher, and I'm still a bear. And suddenly I'm a cave bear or a polar
Mhm.
bear, and
Mhm.
then there's jump in power and a bunch more hit points. So you have this thing of, especially Circle of the Moon, kind of does this thing, and they stay at that point until they can turn into an elemental or a dinosaur of some kind. If you have that, if that's in your campaign world, um, but they have this. They kind of like they stall out for a while, and so having those things where you can incorporate some of your magic items or your concentration spells there is a way to mitigate that and keep you from falling off.
Mhm.
Um, because essentially, yeah, once that fighter has a good weapon and suddenly they're getting two attacks or three attacks and you're still getting two
Mhm.
and you don't get to add anything to it. It's just and it's like
Mhm.
it you start to lag a bit, and yes, you have a lot of hit points, but the barbarian has more.
Yep.
Um,
So
so
we did one where the DM gave me the beads of fire. Is that what they're called? I think they're fire, where you can pull the bead off and throw it and fire power comes
sure,
out. Right. So we ruled,
fireball, yeah,
yeah, because I had to attune to it and it was a part of me now that when I turned into my beast form, the other players could pull those beads off of me while in combat and be able to use them. And I went,
interesting,
okay, how is this going to work? I didn't see how it would work well because, I'm the upfront fighter. They are not. They're in the back. I don't understand how that would work until we did it. And then it was awesome. I
hmm
recommend it all the time. They were
yeah,
able to jump up, grab the bead, throw it, and then because they weren't close to the enemy, they could disengage without having, or really just fall back without having to worry about
sure,
opportunity attacks. And I went, well, and since I was special and I had a special little ring on me that made me fire resistant, I could take the hit of fire and not have to worry about it too much. Because,
sure, that's
the massive amount of hit points that druids have.
hmm which they have scaled back in 2024. You
Hmm.
get temporary hit points. You get the full hit points of the creature each time you change, which was, I mean, that was really broken. I mean, frankly, it's like, oh yeah, I'm low on hit points. I go back to being my druid. And I still have my full hit points as a druid. They don't change back into the same creature and get the full hit points back again. It was like, it was crazy.
It was.
Druids were the ultimate tank for a little while there, especially at lower levels.
Hmm.
Um, like you'd be sitting around like at at first level being able to turn into a wolf with like 20 hit points, and everyone else has like 10.
Hmm.
And I effectively have like 8 plus 20 plus 20. So
Yep.
um yeah, 10 times the hit points of anybody else. So yeah, it's a little tricky sometimes, keeping that balance going there. And so um the main thing, druids have a lot of variation to them and a lot of different aspects to them, so they kind of oftentimes have to have some sort of discussion with the DM about like, how do I make this work? How do I make myself work in this world that you created? How do I make this work with the items I want to do and the way I want to play? Um, it really does, because I mean, like I said, the Circle of Stars one there, they don't change into animals. They use their wild shapes to take on different aspects. They're different little um, and there's other ones that other druids that can use their wild shapes in different ways than changing into animals as well. And so that's where you have an interesting change in how resources are used. So I think almost honestly almost more than any other class, druids really have. I mean, we talked about how yeah, you can have an all party of all clerics, you
Hmm.
have a party of all bards, and make a balanced party here. Druids have such a wildly different role depending on how they want to play at a given time.
Yep.
Like you can suddenly become the main healer. just by swapping out your spells. You can
Hmm.
suddenly be the tank. You can suddenly be dealing out crazy amounts of damage, elemental damage especially. So it really kind of comes down to um, what is needed at the moment, essentially. Um, so yeah, druids have a very interesting aspect of the party where it's like everybody else has to like pick their role and they're stuck with it. Druid can shift it around quite a bit.
I often tell players when they say, "Hey, what is the party missing?" and so I can fill that role. I usually go Druid because
Yeah.
I mean you can pick whatever Druid you want, and whatever spells that you happen to prepare for the day makes you that Druid, the healing Druid,
Hmm.
the tank Druid, the support Druid. It, they can
Yeah.
literally be the support character or not, depending on how that day is going. And
Hmm.
what I
Yeah.
love the most about Druid is if you're being the support player at the beginning of the fight, you notice that your upfront fighters are starting to take a pummel and your healer doesn't have any more heal spells, you can step in and go, "Look, I got this," and just take over and give them time
Hmm.
to recover so that they can come
Yeah.
back in.
Exactly.
I love Druid
So
so much.
yeah, Druid. Yeah, I think they had the most situational variability, situational usefulness, that other classes don't really have as easily.
Hmm.
Um, when you mentioned your druid artificer,
Hmm.
my immediate thought is, well, be an alchemist artificer. Everything is all about element. I just have nature's my big pouch of herbs and stones and animal bits that I combine together into an alchemist thing, and boom. Um, I mean, I could totally see that working in that aspect there. Um, the other one is you could really go crazy with like uh no, I wouldn't maybe because yeah, the idea of like having like the instead of a steel defender, the what's the artificer that has the steel defender, the big robot automaton.
The Warforged?
Well, no, it's not. It's one of the artificer subclasses that basically it
Oh,
gets a companion there. Um,
you are talking to the
make
wrong person about Artificer,
well,
Jim.
I know. I mean, I haven't played that version yet there, but it's the one that has a companion. And it's basically a big
Okay.
robot. Um, Nothing says you can't make that a big tree or a big like like you've animated a tree, and
Hmm.
that's your steel defender is now your nature defender, your wood defender, and you suddenly have an artificer build with a druid that still works exactly the same way. It's just skinned differently. So um, again, that's what I love in all of these things. There's so many ways to put your own spin on things. I know I saw a druid who was a Circle of the Moon Psi fighter.
Ooh,
Or no, sorry, it wasn't Psi fighter. It was Circle of the Moon Echo Knight. So
even
Echo
more.
Knight abilities So Echo Knight ability suddenly you're two bears, and like which one's
Hmm.
the real one? And be able to swap back and forth there. So there are just some crazy ways to mix and match. And again, with a um with a Circle of the Moon, which is again the most common way people play, if it's a class ability, you can use it. They can't cast spells, but they can use any class abilities that they have from anything. So the idea of one thing that I did once is a druid sorcerer with subtle spell should be able to cast subtle spells meta magic while in animal form because it doesn't require words or incantations. So if you use subtle spell meta magic, you should be able to cast a sorcerer spell while in druid or any spell while in animal form.
That's an interesting build. I might have to do
So
that. The
I
next
mean,
poor
because
DM that
you
is
have
watching.
yeah. So yeah, if you have a druid, so now obviously you're not gonna be able to do. You only have a certain limited amount of meta magic, but a sorcerer druid with subtle spell should be able to cast spells while in druid form.
Well, I
I
mean,
rule it that way. So yeah,
if if you think about it, yes, because now in sixth edition, druids can speak even in their beast form to their party
yeah,
members. They don't need like the helmet telepathy or anything. So
Sure.
it's a thing that happens now. Um, so why couldn't they cast a spell in beast form?
I mean, at
It's-
this point, there's no other than that they can't make the gestures, but then you can still make things that like I don't. It's a limitation they put on druids because they didn't want to give them the ability to do whatever they wanted while in animal form. But at the same time, I mean, it makes for a fun build. It makes for a fun visual, especially.
Yeah.
You see this big old like bear like waving its paws around here and like speaking some wolf, 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 and then off a fireball goes. I mean,
So I had a weird one and I just lost it. Druids spells. I lost it. Sorry. It was a
exactly.
weird statement. I'll remember it later and I'll ask you about it.
Sure. Um, So, uh, last thing I want to mention is druids and other systems. Druids are fairly distinct to D&D. Most other systems have the idea of druids, but they are a separate class. They're just sort of like anything that uses nature type things might be a druid. Where D&D has its own special class for druids, most other systems out there that have magic in them will just have nature magic, and that's you're a druid. Um, you don't have to have like a nature cleric and a druid and else that it's like druid things are much more fluid in how characters are built. um so you don't have to have like D&D is fairly unique in the way it sets up its classes. Most other systems have a more fluid thing of like take a bit of this, take a bit of that, and then make something that fits in this. So you can call it a druid, but it may not be the same druid we expect to see in D&D. Um, so, I mean, obviously, you can do the same thing in D&D with multi-class builds, interesting interpretations of rules, um, applying certain magic items and effects can obviously change things up a lot. But yeah, I mean, it's all about again having fun, and if everyone's having fun, that's what matters, right?
Hmm. I
So,
remembered it. Bonus
yeah,
action bonus action healing spells, not the spell itself.
healing.
So I don't know because I haven't played more than just the Moon Druid, but
Mhm.
are Moon Druids the only ones that can use a bonus action as a leveled spell to heal?
Yes,
So it's just a
they
Moon Druid
basically
thing. Okay.
they basically sacrifice a spell slot essentially to regain hit points for themselves, um, and that's the thing that they can do.
So
Because
even
again,
in beast form, they get to just keep piling on the
yep.
amount of
I
heals.
mean, yeah, because the idea is that rather than popping out of animal form, cast a heal, and then they'll jump back into animal form and waste in there. I mean, the idea is that Circle of the Moon, their whole thing is being in animal form, especially the combat forms. So a lot of times, a Circle of the Moon druid has sitting with all their spell slots because they may have cast one spell beforehand, and their spell slots are just sitting there. What do you do with them? I think sixth edition or 2024 edition, they try to incorporate some other ways to use spell slots to do things. I'm not sure where they landed because I didn't see the final version of the build that they're but it's interesting to see what they do. Again, it's finding a way to balance things, but finding a way also to make things more fun. And what I found a lot of times in Druid form, in Circle of the Moon form, it was okay. I claw and I claw. My turn's done. I claw and I claw. My turn's done. Oh, I got knocked out of my animal form. I guess I'll bonus action wild shape back into my animal form and claw again. Uh, so it's like it's it any way to spice that up, any way to make that more interesting is definitely helpful. So yeah. Um, but yeah, I encourage you to check out obviously the old druid druids in various editions, how druids are handled or druidic type magics are handled in other systems. They're it's a very common thing, the idea of a nature based spellcaster um, is going to fit that role pretty well. Nature based powers. But I think we're just about out of time here. Anything
Hmm.
else you want to throw out there, Nance?
No, No, I was actually looking up the Druid spell stuff that we were just talking about, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I'm not
Um,
seeing anything in here specifically as to the Druid. Now, I haven't gotten into the individual classes or the sub
sure.
races, but we can do that later
Okay.
and figure it out.
Yeah. Let's see here. What's next?
Fighter, I
I
believe.
Is it fighter? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, uh, what potentially I would say, maybe people think of as the most boring class, but there's a really interesting take that I have, that one of the people out there on TikTok, with fighters here, and I'll mention it now, and we'll go elaborate on it next time here. But I want you to imagine you're in a dungeon and you got this cleric throwing out these radiant spells and healing abilities, and this fighter throwing out fireballs and crazy lightning bolts and chaotic magic and with that. And I'm a dude with a sword. How tough are you? Like, you don't rage, you don't sneak and do huge amounts of damage. I'm
Mm-mm.
just a dude with a weapon.
Mhm.
How ballsy are you that you're in the middle of all this chaos and everything else, and you're just swinging a piece of metal around, and that's how you deal with the situation there. Fighters are crazy, and we're gonna see a lot of talk about little fighters here and kind of how they um, kind of evolved over the years and what they kind of are now, and the variations on fighters and everything else. I mean, obviously, fighters have probably the most wide reaching, like, ways of doing things style wise, the weapon choices and their abilities, but also just like there's a lot of things that fighters do that can make them one different from each other. So we'll check into that, and see that next time here. So, by class act, what fight?
On guard.
Bash. I don't know.
It all depends
I
on
don't
what
know.
that fighter's using. If they want to use a hammer
Exactly.
or
Again,
baseball
it's
club,
so hard
whatever.
because, yeah, that archer fighter they have. I mean, like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, we'll get into that next time here. But, uh, I want to thanks for hanging out with this dragon there. It was good to see you again. And those of you watching in the future, yeah, as always, drop some comments in there, throw us a like, and tell your friends about us, about what we go here. If you're interested in checking out things with the fighters, next time, if you want to see our past class act or any other our abilities, they're up on our YouTube channel. Check them out and let us know what you think, and where we're heading next. So, hope you all have a good time, playing and running and, hanging out with everybody. As always, that works too. Yes. Finish him. Um, so, thanks again for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. As always, you're always welcome to take it there. Stop by for a drink, hang out with us, and enjoy those games. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.